Welcome, everyone, to Two Guys in Hockey Talk. My name is Pawel, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Evan REV Renaerts, for episode 26 of season 6. We are already more than halfway there, close to the playoffs, less than a month away, and we've got a jam-packed show for you guys tonight, but we are here right now, like we always talk about, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We are on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter /X, and we are connecting with you live tonight. Evan, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I just want to tell everybody, go check out twoguysinhockeytalk.com. Man, get in there. Go take a look. All of our former guests, there's still guests we're going to be adding. We're probably not going to get caught up on all of our former guests, guys. If you really want to get some stuff, go to our YouTube channel, also Two Guys in Hockey Talk. You can pull up all of our YouTube for all of our former guests, but it probably might be the summer before we get to all that stuff, because it's hard to keep up when we're not monetized. So just a heads up, I've had a lot of people think, man, you guys must be monetized, the networks, the people you're connected. No, we do this for the love and the passion of the game. And we cover such a variety of information across everything in hockey. We haven't even got this year. I've been aiming to want to get some. We've been talking for a year and a half, Pawel, about getting a whole bunch of minor hockey, getting a bunch of kids on with their parents and stuff like that. We've been talking about roller hockey, getting some guys on. There's some stuff we haven't got to, but go check out our articles. And you know what? Just get on there, man. Find stuff out. Follow us. Like he said, there's a lot of stuff going on. And I like to just throw a shout out for our 4 main partnerships. Our website with JR Web Designs for all your web design needs. The best pricing. You're not going to get better pricing out there. The other one is Penny Billionaire. So the music that you hear coming in and going out, our intro and outro, is all by Penny Billionaire's electronic rock electronic band. Oh, there we go. The Kalkaska Battlers playing down there in the American Premier Hockey League and Semi-Pro League. They've had some great stuff happening. Check them out on their YouTube. And also, got to appreciate Hart Levine, who's been on this year, one of our guests. And also we partnered up in supporting them through Puckpedia. All your sources. Don't go to Cap Friendly. Doesn't take you anywhere now. It's owned by the Washington Capitals. Go to Puckpedia.
Awesome.
Well, hey, so we got to be honest with you. Our guest for tonight couldn't make it tonight, but there's good news. The guest we pre-recorded our show yesterday. We'll introduce him when our show comes on in our preview here. But before I get to that, I just have to say, let me see if I can find it. Hang on a sec here. Oh man. Oh, here it is, Pawel. My wife came to me today, and she said, I got bad news for you, honey. She goes, it appears that Pawel has gotten a hold of your headphones. And I didn't understand what she was saying, because I'm not wearing my headphones, right? I have another pair, but these don't plug in. I don't have the converter. So I was going to wear these, but apparently the cat has got onto my headphones. So she says, Pawel got onto your headphones. And I was like, Pawel? No, it was my Maine Coon cats who decided to literally flip my monitors upside down and grab all my stuff. So that's all that happened. Anyway, do you want to, why don't we go right into our pre-recorded interview? So if you have comments, by the way, guys, throw them up there. We will send it to our guest off show, and we'll connect you up if you want to. He's from the San Jose Sharks. He writes for them at Hockey Now. We'll give you a little bit more intro around everything happening on it. Guys, this will be a great episode. You're going to love to hear what he has to say for the next 20 minutes on this part of the pre-record. We'll come back, got lots of NHL, around the rink, and hockey history and whatever. Man, there's just more than we even have time to talk about. You ready? Let's do it. Headliner, brought to you by JR Web Design. Is your website stuck in the Stone Age? Well, you need JR Web Designs. They'll craft you a website that's as awesome as our show.
Welcome, everyone, to our wonderful guest, William SP. I hope I pronounced that right, who is a local Sharks contributor for San Jose Hockey Now, a previous Columbus Blue Jackets hockey writer, and you are located in the California area. William,
Woo!
how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing today?
We are doing wonderful. We appreciate you taking the time for coming on the show. We know that this is a pre-recording, given that we normally are on Wednesday nights, 7 p.m., but you've taken the time, and we want to get into it. But first thing, I know you just announced something that to us behind the scenes that was happening to you. So do you want to just share with everyone?
Yeah, so growing up, I could never afford to play hockey, so I finally got the opportunity to do that this past Sunday. Didn't go how I had hoped, though. About 10 minutes in, I tore my MCL on a drill. Hey, I finished out, though. I played for the next hour and a half on it, so that just hurt to walk for a bit, but slowly getting better there.
Hey, William, I'm just wondering because, that definitely is a hockey player. You got to be a hockey player to keep playing. And then second of all, I'm wondering if you were trying to get on the ESPYs yourself, have William Espy win the ESPYs with the first guy to play for the first time and tear out, what is it, your meniscus?
MCL. Luckily,
Your
not the
MCL,
meniscus.
okay. I don't know, man. They all hurt.
They do. Luckily, I think the MCL is probably the not as bad one. I just heard the pop, and I'm like, that's not good no matter what it is. But
I don't know who your coach or GM is, but I'm pretty sure you can get past the LTIR and just continue to play.
yeah, they're staying about 3 to 4 weeks, and I'll be back. So not too bad. Not too bad.
So you've been following the San Jose Sharks, and as everyone knows, they were just recently eliminated from the playoffs, and of course, they're in a rebuild. We all know that the team is going through. You got the Macklin Celebrini, who has been dynamic for the team. But what have been some of the surprises and kind of both positive or negative things that you've seen from this team thus far in the season?
Honestly, I would say the one thing that surprised me early on in the season was not getting more of Shakir Mukhamadullin right out of the gate. I figured with the way the team was, there was no reason for him not to be in the lineup pretty much right out of the gate. Once he got up there, he started doing pretty well on that. Another guy who's been doing really well lately is Colin Graff. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but I want to say like 5-game point streak in recent history. He's been doing really well. And overall, things have been going, obviously, statistically in the standings, not great, but everybody's developing pretty nicely. There are a couple guys in the system specifically I want to see more out of, or they're probably not going to make it. Main one, Thomas Bordeleau, hasn't even been in an NHL game this year. And Philip Eastet, he's still pretty young, but you would think he'd be kind of cracking the lineup now and then by now, but still some time for those guys as well.
So what would you say so this season up to date so far, what has been the most compelling story that you've had to cover this season?
I think it's hard to say anything other than Macklin Celebrini with that. I think what I've noticed is no matter who you talk to, because with me, I go to the away locker rooms at the games, so I'm usually talking to the opponents, and everybody is highly complimentary of him. Like, I think Dylan Strome said about 4 times he's a heck of a hockey player. Like, he said he made him look dumb a couple times. Like, it made him look like the rookie. So it's definitely been fun being able to be around the atmosphere. And I mean, obviously, I think it'd be a different environment if the Sharks were winning a lot of these games. They probably wouldn't be as nice. But overall, I mean, obviously, Macklin's been great. I mean, Will Smith as well. I mean, he got off to a very slow start, but we've seen him start to get it going. He's starting to look more confident. And I mean, overall, I mean, just the environment around the team is a lot better than what you'd expect for a team where they are in the standings. I know you look at somewhere like Chicago, and it seems like everybody's always down in the dumps, especially Bedard. But in San Jose, you've got people stealing Sharky's 4-wheeler, driving it on the ice, and then Macklin Celebrini falling off of it. Like, I mean, that's not something you expect to see from a team that's at the bottom of the standings. But they're enjoying it, and as they should. I mean, there weren't many expectations on the team this year.
Yeah.
And I think they might be underperforming a little bit. Like, I think you wanted to have them take a little bit of a step up with Macklin, maybe not be dead last. But, I mean, overall, this is what we expected from the gate, and this is what we're getting.
No, that's fair. And I think people kind of notice, especially true hockey fans have seen, regardless if they're Sharks fans, that little caption photo that I believe it was Eklund and Smith, or Celebrini and Eklund and Toffoli all having kind of a sleepover in their hotel room. That looks cool. You want to build that bond because when you look at some of the greatest teams, you look at even Vancouver and what happened this year and the tension there in the locker room, you want to be able to have that positive buzz. But I guess what we want to kind of know is, what do you think is the most significant factor contributing to team's overall record? Like, what is it that they should be focusing on for next season, and even in the last few games that are left in this regular season?
Well, a big part of it's the defense. I mean, realistically, your best defenseman's Ferraro, and I think on a good team, he's like an average second pairing defenseman. He's not the guy you want leading the charge back there. And that's something that's not really going to be improving very quickly either. I mean, you have Mukka Madulin coming up. You have a few other guys, notably Sam Dickinson when he's ready. But overall, there's a big lack of depth in the defensive prospect pool. And that's something they definitely need to focus on. And definitely if they want to move up out of the basement, they need to start adding some veteran pieces back there who are going to be a little bit higher end. I mean, going into free agency this year, sounds like Greer's ready to take that step forward and start moving out of the rebuild. So it'll be interesting to see what ideas he has in that regard, especially when you still have the contract to someone like Marc-Edouard Vlasic back there, which is kind of be an anchor until it runs out. So they've tried making some moves, like obviously Vincent Desharnais isn't going to be a game breaker, but he's somebody who's going to have that little bit of physicality and size, kind of protect your young guys. And I think that was the right move for this season. But they definitely need to get some higher end guys coming in sooner rather than later on the back end.
You were talking just around Greer, so we're talking about management now. Within off ice and talking about, let's move to coaching. When it comes to the coaching right now, could maybe evaluate what you have seen from the coaching this year, and especially as it pertains to player development with a lot of the players.
I think from what I've seen with Warsofsky is he has his moments, but he seems like a very patient type of coach. He knows these are young guys. Like Will Smith, the first 10 games, he could have easily been like, hey, you're not good enough, just sit, and we'll get back to it. Or talk to Greer, send him to the AHL for a bit. That didn't happen. He saw, okay, this kid's struggling. We need to figure out what's going on and get him going. And he isn't overreacting to anything, which is very key for a young team. Obviously, they have nights where you could tell they didn't show up. They just aren't, their head's not in it. But compared to last year, there's a lot less of them. This year, they seem more engaged, even if the score is not that close. I mean, look at games like Washington. You had Ostapchuk dropping the gloves with Tom Wilson when the game started getting out of hand. You have guys there who are ready to go, ready to have energy no matter what. And I think that's the biggest difference I've seen coaching-wise from what David Quinn was doing last year compared to what we're seeing from Ryan Warsofsky this year. Is just the team looks more engaged. They look like they're having, as we talked about, more fun. And he's not being too hard on them because he knows most of these guys are just kids. Like, you shouldn't have to rely on an 18-year-old as your top line center. Like, that shouldn't be a regular thing in the NHL. And even guys like the veterans, I mean, we've seen in the past, Alexander Wimberg, for example, when I was covering in Columbus, John Tortorella was going crazy on him because he wouldn't shoot the puck. And now he's getting better at that as he ages, but you don't really see that anymore. I mean, there was the whole mistranslation thing with Kovalenko that came out a while back, but that got all sorted out. And overall, it seems like Warsofsky is doing good. I mean, for me personally, I think there's not really much more a coach can do in this situation with the roster he has. I mean, hey, if you give John Cooper this team, what's he get? 5 more wins? I mean, it's not like it's going to be that much better. It's just more like as these guys start to develop, I think there is going to start becoming some pressure on Warsofsky. I think next year, if things aren't going in the right direction, he's going to have a little bit of pressure. But overall, I think he's been doing pretty good. He's been pretty much on top of it and not pushing these guys too much. He's letting them develop as they need to and giving them time to do so.
And so I wanted to ask you about leadership, and you're looking at potentially some offseason moves, and we can get into who that may be. Is it someone like a Marner that you can potentially attract, to bring in and play? But I wanted you to speak a little bit more about Logan Couture, because he had become captain when the team was still pretty good. I know he was injured last season. This year he's kind of been in and out of the lineup, to my knowledge, and you can maybe clarify where he's at. But what does he bring as a leader to this team? And where does he fit in? Is he still a top 6 guy, or is he going to be potentially that third line pairing, captain material that you see?
Honestly, there's not much coming out about him. So he actually hasn't played at all this season.
Okay.
Last year, I think he played somewhere around like 8 games towards the end of the season, and that was pretty much it. So it's been almost realistically 2 full seasons without him really playing much hockey. And there's not really much being said about him. He's not really around the team that often. He's been there for some big nights. Like he was there opening night. He was there for Thornton. And he's there occasionally, but he's not there on a nightly basis. He's not skating. There hasn't really been an update on him in pretty much since the start of the season. It's one of those things where his future's up in the air. Like we don't know if he's ever even going to play again at this point.
Wow.
From the sound of it.
Okay.
That's tough. Okay, so because like you said, it's a tough season. How much more can they get out of games? Like you said, Cooper, 5 more games, and so one of the things that I wonder, especially in a down season, there's other teams that have gone through this kind of stuff. Whether it was Chicago, many years in Buffalo, many years in Edmonton. Some other cities are dealing with the same thing. My question now for you would be, what has been probably the most challenging aspect of covering the team this year?
This year, it's been more just kind of knowing what's going to happen going into the game. You kind of know, like, especially with the rookies, they take a lot of these losses hard. Guys like the Toffoli's and even Eklund's been around a while. They kind of know what's coming. But for the guys like Macklin, Will Smith, and even Askarov's always positive, though, so I can't really bring him into it. But for Macklin and Will, they really kind of take those losses hard at times, especially they're hard on themselves, which is why they are in the situation they're in. If you're not hard on yourself, you're not going to be a top pick in the NHL. And I think that's been the hardest part. And also just seeing some of these guys kind of get left out of the shuffle as well. Like I think I mentioned Bordelot earlier off the air. Like he's not really getting in there. But at the same time, on the flip side of that, there's guys you wouldn't expect to be there who are, like a Colin Graff. So it's one of those things where it's hard to watch people who have been winning their entire lives suddenly get thrown into the NHL and then nothing.
Yeah.
And we love prospects here, especially Evan. He talks about his Rev Top 15 all the time. So we know, of course, you're playing a lot of young guys in the San Jose organization. But even for the Barracudas, are you paying attention to that team? And if so, who should fans really keep in mind eye on?
So there's a few. The main one, the one who's been lighting it up this season, Luca Cagnoni, just got recalled. So he's going to make his NHL debut, sounds like Thursday. So I'm going to look up his numbers real quick. I don't have it right here, but I think last I saw he was second in the AHL in scoring for defensemen, and it's his first professional year. So he's doing great. I mean, you got guys we've seen a little bit in the NHL this year, like an Ethan Cardwell. I don't think his ceiling is going to be super high, but he's going to be a good bottom 6 guy coming up. But realistically, even with the Barracuda, a lot of the Sharks prospects aren't even there yet. You still have all the guys like you have the Quentin Musties, you have the Sam Dickinsons are still in junior. So I think next year or the year after, the Barracuda are going to get really interesting very quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think Dickinson's probably they're going to give him another year. He's not eligible next year still. So you're going to be probably, which is crazy when you kind of see how he's performing right now with it. So this is my last question of the night, and then we'll go out. Pawel probably has one last one he wants to throw out there before we call it a wrap. We definitely appreciate your time, guys. This is William Epstein, and he contributes to writing for the San Jose Sharks. So definitely anything around Sharks. This is a pre-recorded show, so unfortunately we can't take your live comments. But if you guys have questions, we will forward them over to him, and you can follow him at the digits below there to follow him on X, as my friend likes to call it, Twitter.
Yep.
So anyway,
Because it is.
okay, so here's my last night here for you then.
Yes.
So going into the draft, it's looking good that you're going to have a good chance to get a really good draft pick. I think this, for me, for the Sharks, I think this is very good because one more year, because right now the top 4 is pretty loaded, like loaded to bear. So my question for you would be, if regardless of where you get to pick, I mean, we don't really know who's going to go 1, 2, and 3 right now. We have a good idea at 4. My question is, you got Misa, Schaefer, Hagens, and Martone. Any of those, would you have a preference 1, 2, 3 for the Sharks to pick up if you could pick him up?
I think based on what I said earlier, it has to be Schaefer just by the fact that they need defense desperately. They have a lot of forward prospects still coming up, like Musty, for example. I think he's going to be a phenomenal player, and he's going to be that power forward that kind of really brings everything together up front. So I think adding somebody like Schaefer to that back end, especially when you get Dickinson coming up in a couple of years too, like those two would just make this team pretty much unbeatable, especially if Askarov behind them in net. So this is going to be a team that's going to be scary if they can get Schaefer in a few years.
Sweet.
Very nice. And so I'll go reiterate back to my original question. Fans love what's it called? The off season. You know, you're signing new, fresh agents, and I wanted to know a two-parter essentially to finish off is who is someone realistically that we or Mike Greer should actually go after in the off season? Would it be a Marner? Would it be a Nikolai Ehlers or an Aaron Ekblad or a Brock Nelson or even a Sam Bennett as a 2C potentially there? And where do you realistically expect the Sharks to do or how to do next year in the Pacific in the standings?
I think when it comes to additions, like I think somebody like Ekblad, if you can get him on short enough of a term, would be a great addition because you have that right-handed D kind of solidify things a bit. For someone like Bennett, I would be very skeptical because it's one of those things where it could be great. It could be. Yeah. But there's a chance it's not. The very big chance it's not. So I think it's one of those things where you kind of have to be cautious. I honestly, if I was in the situation, I wouldn't go for someone major. I would probably be looking for someone like maybe a Nelson, someone like that, not a Marner, not anybody huge, just somebody who can kind of fill like that spot behind Celebrini for a little bit. Because if you give Celebrini the top center line, you get Nelson behind him, that allows you to give Smith a little more time on the wing. Then you have Winberg as your third line center. And that's pretty decent center depth there, especially if they could bring back somebody like a Nico Sturm to play that bottom line. I mean, then you have a very solid center core that's going to hopefully get you some wins. And for the second part of it, I think the goal is just not to be last. I think that's where you have to be. I mean, look at how long some of these teams have been expected to move up. The Ducks are the one that comes to mind. Like, they shouldn't still be this bad, but they are. And I think ultimately that's why I think for Warsofsky next season, there needs to be a little bit of a leash on him because you can't let it fall into the same situation with Greg Cronin where this team should be a lot better. But realistically, it seems like a big part of it is a coaching issue. I mean, if you have that guy calling Mason McTavish a third-line center, that's not great. Like, realistically, you should be trying to get somebody like McTavish top 6 minutes. So I think if you start seeing any of those type of patterns with Warsofsky, the team's not improving, and you still finish last, then something has to change in coaching at that point.
Okay. Well, we appreciate, William, all your insight and knowledge. You guys can go follow him at Twitter/X at William_SP. Anywhere else they can find you? It looks like San Jose. Go ahead. Plug in.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty much everywhere these days. I cover a lot of different things. So I got the Shark stuff at San Jose Hockey Now. I still do some Blue Jacket stuff at the Hockey Writers. I cover soccer. I cover baseball. I'm everywhere. So just easiest place is probably going to be Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. That's where I'm going to have pretty much everything. So just going to be a bunch of random stuff there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So thanks so much for just taking the time out of your schedule, doing this pre-record, setting it up for us. I know we've kind of been working on this for about a month and a half on the timing, so definitely appreciate it. Look forward. Maybe we'll have to have you back. Maybe we can talk a little bit closer to that draft and when we actually know the placement and what's happening, and kind of maybe maybe start listening to what's going on in those circles. Send us some notes, and we'll be sure to get that news up on the show. Man, thanks so much. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you guys as well. I appreciate you guys having me on, and definitely look forward to being on in the future if you guys will have me.
Of course. We appreciate it. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers, man.
Guest headliner, brought to you by JR Web Design. Is your website stuck in the Stone Age? Well, you need JR Web Designs. They'll craft you a website that's as awesome as our show.
All right, sorry, I jumped on here. I was so excited.
I was taking care of everything, but that's okay. You know, I know how the cats like to take control, do their own
I'm
thing.
jumping on the keyboard here when I shouldn't. All right, well, that was quite a good interview. We enjoyed William being on the show yesterday and for connecting us. Now, we're going to get into some NHL news because it's been a busy, busy little time. Oh, look at that. I have converted you. I have made you a believer.
Look at this. Woo! Okay, keep talking, man. This guy doesn't normally.
There's a lot of news coming out of the NHL, so let's get into it because quite a bit has been going on. So right now, the NHL GM meetings are happening, and it sounds like the CBA negotiations are about to start as of April 1st. Now, the previous CBA is still scheduled for the end of September of next year, I believe, September 15th or 16th, I want to say. But again, it's never too early to start. It doesn't sound like there's going to be a lot of issues, and it sounds like both Marty Walsh and the Players Association are going to come to an agreement. It looks like there's going to be some things. Now, at the same time, they are talking about some other things happening. What is goaltender interference? We've discussed this many times here. However, it sounds like, according to Gary Bettman, there's not any changes coming, not even the 10-minute overtime due to TV rights, timing, managing people at the arena, things of that nature. So even though it was fun potentially to see at the World Four Nations, it sounds like it's not happening anytime soon. They're discussing the All-Star game, which after the success of the Four Nations, how do you go back to that? Do you move it to September? Things like that are happening. And and the wear and tear of players, the ice conditioning, things of that nature. So any thoughts on that, Evan?
No, I think that pretty much straightforward. There's not a lot of action that's happened this year at the GM meetings, around that. Most of the information that, has come out, I get it, that they're worried about players and ice and all that stuff. But did that really look any different at the Four Nations? And what got me thinking is, at the Four Nations, I mean, remember Nathan McKinnon? He was dog tired. And the reason he was dog tired is because they kept playing the same players. Yeah. Maybe if you in the NHL, you're not going to only play your top 2 or 4 players. It does make it exciting and more unpredictable when you go a little bit deeper in that. So, essentially, I get it.
And the other news that's been announced is that Pittsburgh and Nashville are going back to Stockholm for another global series come November 14th and 16th. Should be fun. If you have an opportunity or are in the area and are wanting to go, you should go check it out. I'm kind of just intrigued with the teams. It seems like both teams are kind of rebuilding. Now, I know Nashville may say this is just an off year, but really, I don't know if that's going to work with these two teams because they're at the bottom, right? And you want teams that are competitive. You saw the outdoor game with Chicago and St. Louis. St. Louis is still a little bit more competitive, but you don't know what's going to happen. And Jordan's chiming in. Welcome, Jordan. And he said, I said no chance to Ekblad or Bennett in San Jose. Yeah, it's going to be tough. We'll see what happens. Or Nelson, he wants to win. I see Nelson re-signing with Colorado, but we'll see how the postseason goes for them. It'll be interesting to see.
And you know what I thought, Pavel, when he was talking, you were asking the question around those players and stuff. I was thinking, I know he was talking about Brock Nelson as a number 2 guy behind. I don't see Nelson. It was kind of, I was thinking that's a rebuilding team. If he wants money and they want to offer him a couple years, which I think he'll max out and get something more. I'm not as big on Brock Nelson as some people are. I think he'll be fine. But, and then Ekblad, he said if he does signs shorter, but the problem right now, if he signs shorter, he stays in Florida. He'd stay on a winner. And he wants a full 8 years. They don't want to give him a full 8 years. That's the problem.
He's still suspended too right now for those 20 games, of which I believe some go into the playoffs. I don't know 100%. because when he got handed down that suspension, it was 18 games left in the regular season for the use of the illicit drugs. I know that's something that's also impacting his ability.
What was the number of games that he
20.
got?
He got 20 games.
I couldn't remember. I forgot. I didn't know.
So it'll be something we'll be monitoring as things come around. Even though the cap's going up, they do still have both Ekblad and Bennett to do. And I know that talks have started up with Bennett, but who knows what will happen, right? Talks, I mean, it could change in an instance. So we'll see what happens. Now, I did want to get quick. Oh, go ahead.
Before you do that, I just want to mention on Bennett, you know, he got me thinking. William got me thinking because when he was saying you don't know what you're going to get when you change. We know in Calgary, it's just like he was fine. He is not the player in Calgary that he is in Florida. Does that mean he continues at that same level? I mean, he looked good in the Four Nations. So is that a continuation? Or would you – sorry, I'm just looking at the comments. There we go. Jordan and Zylstra right at it again. But one of the things that has got me thinking is, could he be right that teams are going to be a little gun shy on a high price? Because what if he is just in the right system, you know, with it? Somebody will probably do something though, right?
Well, it'll be interesting. And speaking of other news from around the league, so it sounds like Meyer Heiskanen won't be playing even at least until the first round for Dallas.
Maybe not in that first round at all.
Yeah, so they're going to lose him for a bit. Of course, they went out and got a few players at the deadline, including Cody Ceci, but he's a big part of that back end, and without him, it's going to be tough for Dallas, especially if they're going up against someone like Colorado. And Jordan says you can only win twice within the first 5 years. So I have good reason to assume that other teams can win. I agree. They put in that new rule. I believe it was after both Edmonton and Buffalo continued to win the first overall pick. However, I think I don't know if it's the first two or is it in the first three.
No. So in 5 years, so they won last year, right? The first overall. So that means in the next 4 years. So if this year they win it again, they can't win it over the next 3 years.
Yes.
They just get pushed back a spot, right? Is what ends up happening with it. So there's just no possible.
But it was isn't it the top three? Is that my understanding?
I believe it was more. I never gave it much attention. Jordan, you even have access there.
He probably knows better.
On it, and if you can just kind of throw it up there for us. Appreciate it.
Go ahead.
And I do want to mention just a little way, because I know Jordan's on. Jordan had sent me some info on a young gentleman that just turned 15 right now that's exceptional out there, and there's some stuff that is on him. So Jordan is compiling some information. We're going to get that information out to you. Right now, it seems like these superstar future players are coming out of like where? It used to be you had to wait 8 to 10 years, maybe 12 years sometimes before you got that next superstar. Except these exceptional players are becoming more and more. And some of the talk, so I had some chances this previous week here with a bunch of scouts that are over in the CHL, and then some that are in the USHL, and they're just talking. They're saying, listen, all they do is off season. They're still hockey, even though not everyone agrees. So that could be one of the reasons.
Yeah, Jordan says Chicago's San Jose can only win one more. I mean, you just need one more. However, do you want to go next year when you can potentially have a dynamite forward, Evan, or do you tank this year? Right? I mean, there's a lot of what's it called, where Jordan and Posbeers they're not going. They're talking about this is a beauty.
I think it's because you normally seem to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Oh no, Zill's got into this now. Here we go.
It seems like there's a so it's coming along. Don't worry. I'm getting an early start to my playoff beard.
I'm scared to start my playoff beard this year because when mine comes in, it is so gray. I look like I just aged over 35 years when that happens.
Jordan says, I just said I know, but I'm starting it anyways early. You know, I'm just getting the the head start here, just because I can. I'm doing a Vegas. I'm putting my beard on LTIR.
That's That's awesome.
So, in other news in the Pacific, just to get around some news because we got quite a bit to cover, is that John Gibson. It sounds like there's kind of a boiling point with the frustration situation in Anaheim and him wanting to be out. He was tentatively supposed to be moved at the deadline. It didn't happen. One of the teams I heard is really involved is Carolina, but it's been a bit of a dance. Will they, won't they? And it looks like, according to Elliot Friedman, there will be a decision made with his future and most likely move in the offseason. So expect that, especially since you'll only have 3 more years left at that $6 million plus. So there'll be a different setup in the back net for a team, maybe Carolina, maybe someone else that we're not familiar with. There's a lot of teams in the NHL that could use a goaltender. I'm looking at you, Edmonton, but we'll see what happens. And speaking of Canadian teams, 6 of them right now.
I thought you said, I'm looking at you, Evan. You were going to say.
No, Edmonton. There you go. I have an Ekholm type beard. There you go. Yeah, there you go. That's what I have. The Viking beard. Not as beautiful, not as majestic
as
the
sweetest beard.
Ekholm. But yeah, not as blonde either. But I got to say, when I watched Ekholm yesterday, when Oilers spanked the Utah Hockey Club, he looked magnificent out there. And speaking of Utah, it sounds like they've kind of settled on a name. It's going to be announced soon, but it sounds like from the voting that it will be Mammoth. But it still could be Utah HC. Go ahead.
Did you see? I don't even know who tweeted it out there or put the post out there. But it actually was the Edmonton. So they retweeted it. But the Edmonton Oilers, on their thing, they talked about they had a mammoth win. They're like, did they accidentally leak this? Did they already know? And then I know there's been some logos out there, and they look like the Quebec Nordiques with a hockey stick and a mammoth with a hockey stick in his trunk. No, they can't have the Nordique look and still do it. So, or at least I don't think they can. I don't know. I'm okay with mammoth. It's not ideal, but I think it's probably one of the weaker ones.
And so it sounds like 6 Canadian teams are in a playoff position and are racing to the end, especially in the East. Both Montreal and Ottawa. Now, that was as of last night and this morning. Things could change, but it's exciting because we haven't seen this in a while. And when Canadian markets do well, of course, the ratings are up because fans are so excited, right? And there's still a little bit less than a month left to the season, but can you imagine if 6 teams in Canada got in? That would be wild. Great revenue for all of them. We most likely believe Winnipeg, Toronto, Edmonton will make it. Vancouver and Calgary are kind of battling it out. Ottawa, it looks like they'll probably make it, finally break that drought since 2017. And Montreal, it's been a bit since that Cup Run final during COVID. But here we are. And speaking of clubs, there was a survey recently done of 4,000 fans across the league for all 32 fan bases about the best ownership in the NHL. And so they based it on, how teams are run, managed, things of that nature. Is it a good place to play? Are you attracting good free agents? Is there stability in the organization? Are they willing to spend? How do they treat their fans, especially both part-time and full-time fans? And it sounds like the teams in Florida have made it as the top ownership groups, right? Now, there could be a lot of debate about what this is, of course. But when you have teams like Tampa Bay in first for Jeff Vinnick and Vincent Vinola for the Florida Panthers, and of course, Bill Foley in Vegas, which of course he has his own controversy when, he's trading away top-end players and all their prospects, whether you like it or not. They get a cup in the first 6 years. They're always competitive except for the 1 year where they barely missed. And they're going after every free agent, including this year where they posted that what's it called, emoji of the eyes, and everyone thought, oh, Brad Marchand's going there. So it just goes to show you that, these teams know how to make it work. Now, is it a tax advantage? Sure. But they're doing other things. You want to go to a winning environment. Florida wins last year, Tampa Bay in the last few years, Vegas winning. Of course, that's going to make you a very lucrative and popular organization. You look at the other side of it, and you look at teams that didn't do as well. Well, you got Harry Pagula of the Buffalo Sabres in 32nd, which, again, they're going to miss the playoffs. 12 years, or was it 14 years in a row now? Since it's been a while. You've got Francis Aquilini of the Vancouver Canucks, who I know he's very divisive in Vancouver land. And you've got Murray Edwards of the Calgary Flames, which is very interesting because the team's doing well in Calgary. They're getting a new arena. There are some questionable contracts, but it's still interesting to see, and you can look up the list online where that is. But your thoughts quickly, Evan, on this ownership kind of perception.
I think it makes perfect sense of the perception with them, like you said, because of the controversy surrounding certain groups and where do you want to go, and how involved are they in the team. It can actually go either way. Obviously, Buffalo, you're going to be dealing with that. They're kind of a controversial group to begin with. I would think though that now where was did you have the rankings there? Where Chicago was ranked? I can't recall.
Oh, I don't have it off the top of the
head. Okay, that's okay. But I'm wondering in there, would Chicago be lower still, just because of everything that happened quite a few years back during the Stanley Cup time and ownership? Now I know the ownership has changed hands now to the other parts of the family, but do they still hold it against? I don't know. That's quite interesting. So I see that Jordan just chimed in.
Chicago is in the bottom 5 with the words family.
Okay, yeah. Owners should stay out of the hockey side. Very tough. I feel to say who's the best when we don't see what happens behind the scenes with the owners. And it is. This is who really. I think the only people that could really vote on this should be the players, right? And
but I can see why Buffalo's not a popular destination.
But it should be. They're incredible, passionate hockey fans. It's a great area. You're not in the high competition against everything else. But the ownership, I think if you change the ownership, it changes everything. And the fans can go crazy there. They love a winner. But they'll stick by you while you're losing to a certain degree.
That shows the dedication of the fan base. So we'll get back to a little bit more NHL news in the end, but we want to go to Around the Rink.
If you're a fan of hard-hitting, exciting hockey, catch the Kalkaska Battlers.
Around the Rink
is brought to you by the Kalkaska Battlers. Let them be your local hockey heroes.
All right, guys, Around the Rink brought to you by Kalkaska Battlers. We got quite a bit of KHL news coming out right now, so I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to get Evan's thoughts on it. So just kind of minor little things, and they're all going to kind of somewhat connect, but not really. Just follow along with my train of thought. This is how I normally think. So in a minor kind of news story that was reported, it sounds like the President, Donald Trump, wants to have a game with the NHLers facing off versus KHLers, and I connected about it with Vladimir Putin. Now, nothing has been approached by the NHL. We are not trying to get it political. All I want to say is that it seems silly because you need both NHL and NHLPA buy-in, and for some reason, he's floating this idea. Trump is a fan. He spoke to the American team for the Four Nations. The guys were riled up. But I have a very hard time seeing this. However, this again raises the concern which a lot of fans and people have in the hockey world. When can Russia continue to participate in international hockey? That's a question that we can't decide here or determine, but you guys can let us know your thoughts. Evan, quick things on that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Trump and Putin, does anyone really care what they think? We're not talking about Gorbachev and Reagan here, right? Like after the Cold War and
the summit of 72.
So when you go back in history, it was a very different time. We're talking about the old Soviet Union, the United States of the Soviet Republic, right? The USSR. Our good friend Patrick Conway. He writes everything post-Soviet hockey, even though he knows about some of the players. And the truth is that a lot of the stuff, like you said, there's nothing that they can do. If you want to get these players together, great idea. I actually wouldn't mind a U.S.-Russia kind of a series, like the Canada-Russia series, the Rendezvous years. That would be kind of fun. But the NHLPA is not signing off on something like that anymore. Life has changed, and you're with 4 nations, 6 nations, and if you're not going to play ball with the rest of the people, you want to pick up your ball and take it home like Putin has done, you're going to miss out because the world's a different place now. Whether we like it or don't like it doesn't matter. And so they need to make those changes. I mean, I do think, though, the first, I keep calling it first, but the Four Nations idea of in the future, if you're only having NHL players, you let them play in your league, but you won't let them represent a country, and you won't even let them go as an independent group out of Russia. So, in other words, not associating with the Russian federation, right? You know, so I don't know. I still am mixed on that. It's still good hockey, but I still don't feel like we're getting best on best, and I don't even know if we will for another 2 to 3 years.
Well, I mean, depending on what the Olympics decide next year in Italy.
Yeah, well, I can't. Do you think something's going to change soon? There's been ceasefires 7, 8 to 10 times, or some people say 20. I don't know what the truth is. It's somewhere out there. But the bottom line is, you got two dictators trying to decide what they're. That's just my opinion. I know some of you guys love Trump, so I think he's. Hey, I want you guys to understand this. I can actually talk about Trump differently than you guys. Because if I voted, I'd vote Republican, but I wouldn't vote for Trump. But I have no choice because
I vote we move on from this topic because we've got more news to cover and we're limited on time. So,
hey, well, while we're doing that, let's talk about Demidov.
I was about to get to that, but okay, go ahead. So it sounds like Ivan Demidov has been a healthy scratch for St. Petersburg SKA because the coach has said he may not even play in the playoffs. There has been talks because he is a prospect for the Montreal Canadiens that he will be bought out for the remaining of the season if SKA misses the playoffs, and he may get sent down to the MHL. Sounds like he could finish it. Could Rottenberg, the church, be a bad coach for this decision? The kid is very young. This kid is 19, and he's got in 64 games, having 19 goals and 30 assists, plus 19 playing with men, being an elite player. Like Montreal got a steal here. What are you thinking in this situation?
Well, first of all, Rottenberg has been known. I call him the Mr. Rottenberg. He is rotten for young players. There is this whole thing with Russia and playing players that will move to the NHL. You think you'd want to, highlight those players, but they don't. They also have a thing for older players, and so younger players. But what's weird is he started letting them play. He started excelling. Started getting doing way. Excuse me, I'm boring to myself. I'm yawning. But so he was just playing incredible, and then they just drop his numbers. There's no reason for it. I talked to an agent recently that was over in Russia. And they were saying that, some of the other players, as they're watching, they're like, there's nothing happening. It's not his game. None of that stuff. In fact, in a talent, so a development coach I was also talking to, and he goes, no, I've seen his games. I followed them. He's playing fine. He's playing well. Bottom line is if they don't make the playoffs and they're not very good spot, then they won't get out of the first round. If he gets sent to the MHL, the whole thing was this is like, well, then he can buy himself out early, but doesn't sound like that's going to happen, as you mentioned. So I think it doesn't matter. Get ready, guys. It's Montreal, when you've got all these guys healthy, and you got this great, which I'd like to talk about after we're done around the rink. I want to come back to Montreal because I want to talk about the rookie race. So let's leave the KHL stuff there.
Sure. Well, so you also wanted to discuss the NCAA hockey money coming out of there down the road instead of the USHL program. Some suggest it could be a better development program, and the NHL's teams that are looking for young prospects, for cheap players on good contracts, especially team-friendly contracts, even though the cap's going up, would spend less on development. Your thoughts there?
So this is from Hockey 101 is doing a lot of talk like this, and I'm hoping to actually have Hockey 101 come on. They're talking around a lot of the development. So right now, there's no more money for the NHL to grab sponsorships and groups in Canada. But there's a lot of money that can come out of the United States. So right now they put all their money in. They start, I don't know, I think it was 1967 is when they really started putting their money in with the CHL and Major Junior Hockey. Yeah, there is a connection. So obviously the NHL focuses and gives everything that they can to the CHL. The CHL tries to play and mimic as much of the NHL for younger players to prepare them. NCAA doesn't. They focus more on their academics, so they have good careers afterwards. Their school, they have to keep grades, which, by the way, don't expect all these great players to just go down to the NCAA. Not everybody wants to go learn a lot and focus in on doing academics just as much as they are in their athletics. But remember, they can still go there after, though, now. So that's the benefit. So they can get going, see if they get anywhere by their 19, 20, and if they don't actually get into the NHL and play a game, they can still go to the NCAA. So the thought is right now they're pouring a lot of money into, like you said, into the United States, American leagues right now. I don't know what the numbers were. It was astronomical when I last heard it. But this is the thought. What if they poured money, allowed the NCAA, money into NCAA, man, you know how much NCAA would like that, to create more of a Div 1, even though our friend recently said that he'd like to see them in other hockey colleges. But what if, I want you guys to think about this, if they put that money there, all the NHL teams, they're not playing for player development like they are in the CHL. So those players can develop and come in a couple of years later, because there's already talk maybe within the next couple of years that we could be seeing the draft go back, where only the first round, right, or the first 15 can be of a certain age. There's something along that. I would be good. The first round you can have 18, but after that you can't select 18-year-olds. It's got to be 19-year-olds. Which makes sense, because why can you 18? You're going into America and you can't even go into some places. It's 19 years old, like at minimum, in all these different states, right? So you can't even buy a drink, but yet you can be drafted and bought as like a slave. No, I'm joking. Well, there's some questions around that. So anyway, it's a very interesting thing. And let me just say this to add on. Right now, groups. So Notre Dame. So it's called the Athol Murray of Notre Dame. They have over 250 former hounds that were actually developed there in their school, like St. Shaddix, Mary's, stuff like that. So I just name a few players: Brindamore, Wendell Clark, Curtis Joseph. A lot of Leafs guys would like these guys. Vincent Lecavalier, Brad Richards, Jordan Eberle, Jaden Swartz, Morgan Riley, Tyler Meyer, some of the newer guys. That's just to name a few of the players that have actually come out of there. So there is a lot going on in these places. I would say, you know what? I'd be really cool with more money going into the NCAA, but that's not fair to the USHL when they're the American rival to the CHL, right?
Awesome. And essentially the last thing is, what's it called? You wanted to talk a little bit about the draft. I know it kind of connects in the NHL, but you want to just kind of talk about how the NHL is looking at moving the draft, making it out?
Yeah. So this year we know that what they've done is they considered a remote draft. They're bringing into Los Angeles. They're doing the draft out of Los Angeles, and they're bringing in the top 50 ranked players. Now, whose rankings are they using? Like, there's like 18 to 20 some odd rankings out there. Some would prefer that. However, this is what's coming out now. A lot of people are starting, even though they voted 26-6, a lot of people are now starting to think that they'd like to have a draft that's live in person again. And maybe, and they could go there, but now some of those people that want it, and there's I guess a vast majority, they want to do it every second or every year in Montreal, like they do the Vegas Awards, right? So, you know, at first I didn't like the idea, but in the end, does it really matter? Because if Vegas can always have the awards, why can't Montreal always have the draft? Some cities are just, you know, they're good for hockey. It's good for Vegas to have the awards. It matches where it is. Buffalo, I'd be cool if the Combine was always every year, no matter what, never anywhere else but in Buffalo. They have a great place. It's worked well. So, you know what? Those are good things, I think, for hockey.
All right, and that brings it to Around the Rink.
If you're a fan of hard-hitting, exciting hockey, catch the Kalkaska Battlers.
Around the Rink
is brought to you by the Kalkaska Battlers. Let them be your local hockey heroes.
Now that we've covered that, we're going to get into a little drafting with Rev's Top 15.
Rev's Top 15.
Brought to you by the electronic hard rock band Penny Billionaires. Look for them wherever you find your music.
Hey guys, so I was going to walk through. I've got my next two to move into the top 12. There is movement I have happening around. I'm going to be honest with you. Hagens has dropped for me. I've made also a change a little bit later on in the draft with our Russian. I've also put a couple people in there, including Carter Bear, which we'll talk about. I have him now at 12, even though he's injured, not making back. It could be down. But the guy is just playing phenomenal. However, I want to talk a little bit into future watch because everybody's getting ready. We are only a little over a year, 12, 13, 14, about 15, 16 months away. I know that's a long time for some of you. But Gavin McKenna, we can't stop talking about. We are talking more about Gavin McKenna than we were talking about Connor Bedard, which is his cousin. So I want you to realize what he's doing in his draft 1 year. That means he's 1 year out from being drafted still. So he's not eligible this year. He is only 165 pounds. So the way he's playing and his strength on the ice is pretty amazing. He now is sitting, I want you guys to think about this, right? He is projected to have a 122-point season in his 59 games. So right now, he's at 99 points. He's got 37 goals. Essentially, now, think of these numbers for a guy who just turned 17. He has 2.9 points per game the last 10 games. And his last 5, he's averaging 4 points per game. He is like really just becoming unreal in what he is doing. And so really sky's the limit. And this will be interesting because does he take the opportunity to go NCAA next year now that the eligibility, I think he stays with the Medicine Hat Tigers. That's my personal opinion. And then the other person that I like to come back to started off the season just like phenomenal at Landon DuPont out of the Everett Silvertips of the WHL. And by the way, just so everyone knows, Jordan would like me to mention they're both WHL, and he loves his WHL boys. And, I mean, they are amazing. 62 games in, Landon now is at 59 points, just off a point a game. He started with a bang, but I thought he was going to pick it up. I will be honest. But if you think about 15 years old and playing against these heavy, solid players, playoffs are getting ready to pick up. It makes sense that he's slowed down a bit. I'm not going to read too much into this because he is only 15 playing defense also and almost a point per game. He could finish with a point per game. But I think the real test will be next year, and he will need to be consistent even though he'll only still be 16 and be a couple draft years out. But he will be drafted available after Gavin McKenna's year. So, frankly, I'm already planning that next year's first number 1 overall pick will be Gavin McKenna. And then in 2027, it will be Landon DuPont. So, we'll see. But he'll be a young player to come in and phenomenal, possibly a generational. So, that's it today for Rev's Top 15.
Rev's Top 15.
Brought to you by the electronic hard rock band Penny Billionaires. Look for them wherever you find your music.
Excellent insight, Evan. And just before we finalize the end of the show with some hockey history, I did want to mention that Aiden Hill did re-sign and re-ink with the Vegas Golden Knights for a 6-year, $6.25 million contract that starts next year. He's coming in or off of a great year. Helped them win a cup 2 years ago. Has some really good numbers, 906 save percentage and a 2.53. Was the backup technically for the Four Nations for Team Canada. Good for him. It seems like he's found his fit. He's happy there. They're happy with him. And good for the Vegas Golden Knights to continue to battle it out with Edmonton, LA for that top spot in the Pacific. All right. Anything else before we get to hockey history?
I do just want to give a quick mention and a shout out, because a lot of you, we don't always get to mention what's actually going on for those that are following us. So just from our Facebook followers specifically, I just want to mention Nevada continues to be the #1 state in the United States that seems to produce the most followers for our show. So hey, we're going to continue to give you the hats off. But Iowa is still up there. Lots of fans. Florida, New York, Michigan, but Nebraska, they're new. Guys, I don't know where you're watching your hockey, but you're getting Two Guys in Hockey Talk, and we appreciate it. So I want to throw a shout out there. And out of country. So we know most of our viewers, almost entirely, like 97% of our viewers, are in Canada and the United States. But can I just give a shout out to Bangladesh? Come on, Bangladesh. I don't know if we got some Canadian brothers over there, what's going on. And we've always had a few out of the UK. Germany has picked up. I don't know, maybe we got some followers that have been following Leon Draisaitl and Tim Stutzel, and then Mexico. So, guys, thanks so much for following wherever you're calling in from and doing. And I wanted to say, last week's show, 40% were women for the very first time. We're using 28. 40% women joined in. So, guys, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you. All right, let's get to hockey history.
The Kalkaska Battlers presents Hockey History. Catch the Kalkaska Battlers as they compete in the APHL. Check the skills, speed, heart. Make sure you catch a game and experience the thrill of live hockey. Go Battlers.
Little bit shorter tonight, guys, in hockey history. I want to take you back to 2019, 2020. It was early in the season, but Quinn Hughes, who is an elite defenseman, superstar defenseman for the Vancouver Canucks of the National Hockey League, he was quick to establish himself as a highly skilled defenseman early on. He had the NHL's intensity already understood of what he needed to play like, but he scrutinized himself a lot. There was times where he was actually, his teammates said the guy was visibly always frustrated with his play, and all he wanted to do is go back to look at his pad, figure out what he had to do to correct the game. That's what he is. He's a student of the game. So they actually had to sit him down and talk about his intense self-criticism. And so they noted that he was holding himself to such a high, incredible standard that it actually was starting to affect his game partway into his rookie season. In fact, many of the Canuck veterans would share stories that during that season, which we don't have time to go into here tonight. But what I found interesting is when you have a team and you pull them together and they know what these guys need, they can be the difference in that guy turning into becoming a great player or not. And what resonates to me about Quinn Hughes is it is an example of players who want to do nothing but get better and get better and get better. In other words, they're forever learning at their craft and getting better at it, which just brings me to say, hey, the Cat, Pawel, that's all you do, man. You get better and better. And now, just like Quinn Hughes, you also are part of hockey history.
The Kalkaska Battlers presents Hockey History. Catch the Kalkaska Battlers as they compete in the APHL. Check the skills, speed, heart. Make sure you catch a game and experience the thrill of live hockey. Go Battlers.
Well, we thank you for that those kind words, and for essentially sharing that hockey history, because it's always fascinating to go back in time and learn a little bit more about the league. So we are coming up to the end of the show. We appreciate you guys tuning in. I know Jordan said back-to-back WHL first overall picks kind of up here with Landry DuPont and Gavin McKenna. But remember, guys, we are here every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We are on Facebook, on YouTube. Give us a follow on Twitter /X at REV and myself, hockey_2. We're getting up there. My followers continue to grow. I continue to follow. So give us a follow. And go check us out on our website and look at our partners because they are doing some great work.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible, the work we have done this far in the season. We appreciate every single one of you coming on. We're going to wrap it up here, but I wanted to know, is there any final thoughts you wanted to share, Evan?
No, I'm good, other than I just want to thank all my followers, especially over on X. I appreciate you guys every night jumping in, going on live. If you can do everything you can to be able to share. Again, we're not monetized. That's not our purpose. We're here to actually talk about and share about the passion of hockey, man. So keep spreading the news. We appreciate you.
Indeed. And so, as Evan likes to take us out every single weekend, in the famous words of Ed Whalen, a rig-a-ding-dong-dandy. You guys have a great night. Keep your sticks on the ice. Stay safe. We appreciate you. We love you. Enjoy the hockey. We'll be back next week with more hockey stuff. And a big thank you to William Epsey for his insight. Till next time, guys, stay safe.
On the ice.